It's July 25 and we're on our way to see Canberra. Or Canberra, I don't know how they pronounce it. Anyway, we have stopped here at Lake George because, interestingly enough, on my Google Maps app, it shows this as being all water. And yet here you can see it appears to be almost all land, dry land, and there are fence lines out there and sheep, which seems to indicate that it's certainly dry for much of the time. So we looked up Lake George on the internet, and it turns out that this place really is quite often dry, and the lake itself, which may be visible in the distance over in this direction, actually isn't much deeper than 1, 2, or 3 meters deep at the very most. A lot of wind generators on the far shore there. I'm going to take the lens off, the wide angle lens off, and see if we can see any of the water over there. Just really fascinating here to see a place that's supposed to be water and yet it's not. And there, I think you can see there is some sort of water visible over there, and yet obviously most of the time it is completely dry. It's just so curious to see this big, empty, perfectly flat basin being indicated as a lake, a giant lake, and yet you can see it's not much of a lake at all. Now we're going into the Australian War Museum. So after 2 detours, we did finally manage to find the main entrance to this place. It's the parking lot's kind of around to the side and back of the place, so it's very confusing about how to get in, but yeah, we found it finally.
Australian Army. So between you and I, we always say thank you for your service. I wasn't going to say, but he did. So. Okay, it's yeah, hell no. So welcome you very much, and at least the sun's shining and it's not -6. So we're ahead already. So my name is Gina, and it's a privilege and honour to welcome you to the Australian War Memorial today, and it's also an honour to take you around where we go. The helmets of World War I soldiers. Down you can see Lake Burley Griffin, old Parliament House, which is the white building which is now the Museum of Democracy, and new Parliament House that stands behind it.
That's the building with the big flagpole on it?
Spire, yes. And it must be a Canberra thing because we're all so old and new, because the new one's been there 25 years of people who have died in war service to Australia. On the left side is World War I, where there is 62,000 names, and on this side is World War II and post-45, which has over 40,000 names. Now the poppies came in 1993 when we entombed our unknown. Have you been here before? No? He had been an artist prior to World War I, and when he went off to war, he lost his right arm in the Third Battle of Bulletin War in France. He came home and realised that art was in his head, not his hand. So Henry taught himself, and this is what he produced. There are over 6 million plastics throughout Puck's makeup and mosaic, and he also designed the 15 stained windows. They are all in World War I dress, and they're all in adults' tones to critique World War I soldier standing tall, and above his head are pipes entwined and a flame. And that's to show unity and fellowship. And I've been looking at him for 4 years. It was only 3 months ago I found out he's got a fag in his left hand. Person. So what had happened, her strap had been ripped and she ran off. And so we lost. You know, when I saw that photo, and it was always, it was numbered to come here. And what did they do? In between the time that they said yes, this is the vehicle you'll get, they went over an IED. So it didn't come back whole. So if you look on the bonnet, it says 150, and that means $150 per man per day. So I always have to talk about it. Otherwise, you don't. Okay. The only women allowed to go were nurses. Because I was in the 80s when women didn't go anywhere, and now you have these young things that have got 6 medals on their chests.
Shot in the bloody way. of surviving. For this plane to survive 90 missions is quite extraordinary. And you can see at the side there the symbols representing each mission that it completed. It was flown by Australians, it was part of the Royal Australian Air Force, and it was a lucky plane, not only because it survived for 90 missions, but anyone who was in that plane always came back alive and unwounded. Some of those air crew went to other planes and might have died or wounded, but if you were in that plane, you were safe. And so it was such a precious thing. It's called G for George because that was its designation in the squadron that it was involved with. Now, one of the wonderful things about Anzac Hall, it's got some quite fantastic multimedia presentations. We've got a presentation with G for George called Striking by Night with audio visual and flashing lights, so if you're a bit sensitive to flashing lights, you should be aware of that. Down the other end, we have Over the Front, the First World War conflict.
It's a Lancaster bomber. It's like the one that used to be down on the waterfront in Toronto at the eastern end of Ontario Place for many years, up on a pylon there. This is like one of the, I don't know if it's the exact same one, but one of the type of Japanese small submarines that attacked Sydney Harbor, causing quite an uproar apparently. Obviously some damage there, it's been blown open. Yeah, the metal is all billowed out. Very interesting. And we continue our way toward the parliamentary zone in Canberra. This is the capital of Australia. Only about 1/12 the size of Sydney, with not 4 million people, but about 300,000 only. You really get the sense that this is a city that's been designed for the purposes that it has. You know, it's not accidental. This is the Parliament buildings. And curiously, it's all one way the wrong way for this area. Yeah, we'll take a quick shot. We're not supposed to stop. Yeah, so anyway, the police car behind us did not pull us over, thank goodness. I'm sitting here driving with my camera going, and going slow. This place is almost deserted. I mean, there's a few cars that end up piling up behind me, behind the slow tourists, but, you know, other than that, there's really nobody around. So all the parking garages here have got gates across them. It's access, authorized access only, and there's another truck's just pulling up behind me now, or a bus or something.
I think it's a truck.
Yeah, it's like, why are you going so slow? Because we're tourists. Alright, and here we are, once again, back where we were, and we will, I think, go out here.
Okay.
Yeah. Head back toward the center of town. Apparently there was a competition between Melbourne and Sydney about which city should be the capital of Australia, and because of that controversy, they finally ended up creating the city of Canberra midway in between them to be the capital. And when you're driving around, you can really see that it is a city that's been designed and made from scratch. It doesn't come from some older habitation. We were looking for a gift shop, so we were driving up and down the main street, and the main street is a hugely wide boulevard with a lot of housing on both sides and almost no shops. And the signs every once in a while would point to a little suburb and say shops or something like that. So we would head off. We head off to one called Ainsley, and just found more and more housing, more and more houses, and then in the center of it, a strip of shops in a place actually specifically designed for that purpose. Just a bunch of shops side by side, and that's where all the restaurants and stuff like that is located. So yeah, a very purposely built place, not at all an accident. So this is the Museum of Australia. This is the outside garden of Australian Dreams. This museum is actually more involved than you think. There's more space than we had expected. It looked for a while as if it was very abbreviated, but there's a whole center section that we had overlooked. That over here, the little signpost, that meter stick. So you see those meter sticks on the side of the highway in flood-prone areas, and marking the depth of the water so that if you have to proceed by car, you know kind of what's ahead, whether it's doable or not. I have no idea what some of this stuff is. Let's see where this goes.